Hello everyone, this is going to be my presentation of automated sequences within Premiere Pro. Within this presentation, we're going to cover four different topics. First of all, my current level or prior level in the area of focus. I'm going to cover then automated sequences itself and an extension of them called automated reframing. And last but not least, give you my plans and improvements for the future. Before trying to learn automated sequences, I knew almost next to nothing about them. That's why I gave myself a level 1 on the skills audits. I kind of had the idea that they worked exclusively to work with B-roll, which is something that later throughout this presentation you will see how I find out that it's actually a much better tool and is quite customizable in a way. I also kind of had the idea or knew that at least you could task the process to give you different aspect ratios in terms of your export. And I also had some sort of inherent knowledge that perhaps it might be quite complex in the way that you need to organize your files prior to get this process working, since I already worked with actions in Photoshop the prior week. I started out my research by taking a look at three different sources. First of all, Linda courses, then a web blog called Pond 5, and then a user guide from, the Adobe manufacturer itself, just to try and get a little bit of a grasp of the basic foundations of the process. With all of this considered, I decided to do a montage of a travel footage, produce it using automated sequences, and test myself against time and measure it to see how long does it take me to do this travel footage with automated sequences in contrast to without. I was initially shocked to find out that the way that you prepare a sequence for automation is very similar to the one you would follow if you have a sequence which you do not want to automate. You still have to organize your clips, and if you do them in bins, is much better. And also, if you can potentially rename them, it could save a lot of time. Why is this the case and why I was surprised? Well, because actually automated sequences and something that it does is that, it takes into account the way that you assort these clips, so that then later, the way that the software inputs them into the sequence automatically is the order that you put it within the media browser itself. The way that you mark where you want the clips to be in the sequence is also something that caught my eye, because it's quite simple. You just simply have to match or pinpoint within the audio file where do you want the clips to go via markers. This created problems for me, even though it's as simple as it sounds, because you have to take into account the duration of the spaces between of the markers that you have put down. And then in the kind of in and out points within the clip itself, you have to make them longer than that space has to be, so that then you don't get clips or gaps within your sequence. You can't believe that perhaps the software didn't do it as well, but in fact it's because you're not giving it enough room to work with. A pleasant surprise was that when you actually start to use the automated sequence function itself, is not that hard to actually understand. Most of the things you have already prepared for are straightforward, so there's not too many things that you need to change. And on top of that, it gives you extra configurations if, for instance, you're using image files instead of video. And that actually started to give me a little bit of idea that perhaps you could use automated sequences for something as simple as a presentation just like this one. And another thing was that it gave you the option to overlap over video footage that you have already in your sequence. Something that makes me also think about that perhaps automated sequences is a good tool to work when you have multi-camera setups. Before, the workaround of trying to transition an entire sequence into a different ratio was very long and quite arduous, not only on the user but also on the system, because you had to duplicate the entire sequence, make sure that every clip is centered manually, and also then you're creating a second instance of each of the clips, so making your RAM work twice as harder. But now with this function, it is done automatically with the process itself. You're able to make every single clip be centered directly. You are able to adjust it to the right ratio that you want without touching anything, just simply selecting it from a scroll down. And then also you can just then focus your time in adjusting the titles, adjusting transitions, and centering any single clip that perhaps you think it might be better if you do it manually. So it just reduces a lot of the workload. And with all of that taken into account, without automated sequences, it took me about 3 hours or more to create this short clip. And with automated sequences, it took me about an hour without the reframing, and with the reframing included, about 20 minutes more. In terms of what's next, I want to see how I can utilize automated sequences and auto reframing for interviews, for slideshows, and for multi-camera setups. That is going to be it for now, and hopefully you have enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for listening.